The chamber of the Galactic Council was filled with light and banners of many empires, a place where voices rose like thunder and decisions shaped the stars. Yet on this day the voices carried more pride than reason. Leaders of powerful alien armies sat in their seats, their armor gleaming, their symbols of conquest shining above them, and their words turned toward Earth. They spoke of humans as if they were children lost in the galaxy, untrained, undisciplined, unable to stand before real power. One general with tusks sharp as blades laughed loudly, declaring that a human army could not last a single hour against his trained soldiers. Others agreed, their laughter spreading like fire in dry grass. They called Earth's warriors fragile, called their strategies weak. They believed humans were nothing more than scattered fighters who relied on luck and chance instead of skill and discipline. The hall echoed with arrogance, but under the surface of their laughter, rumors had already begun to move like shadows. Messengers had carried stories from the frontier, whispers of human soldiers moving with strange precision, entire squads advancing in silence, holding formations that never broke even under fire. There were tales of drills that lasted until soldiers collapsed, only to rise again and continue. There were accounts of battles where small human units stood against much larger forces and did not fall, but the council dismissed these reports as lies, tricks spread by frightened scouts. Yet some faces in the chamber grew uneasy. They had seen enough wars to know when whispers carried weight. Still, no one dared speak in defense of humanity, for to do so was to risk the mockery of the proud, and the proud were loud in the council that day. At the center of the hall the High Chancellor raised a clawed hand for silence, his eyes sharp and filled with pride. He declared that the galaxy had nothing to fear from humans. He said Earth's soldiers were not professionals but farmers carrying rifles, miners wearing armor, wanderers who fought like beasts, unorganized and weak. The council roared in agreement, pounding their tables, their laughter rolling like thunder, and yet in the farthest corners of the chamber, a few envoys sat quietly, their eyes not on the banners but on the shadows between them. Those envoys had heard the deeper rumors. They had spoken to merchants who claimed to see humans training in hidden camps, vast fields filled with thousands moving in perfect rhythm, voices calling orders that were followed without hesitation. Training so harsh even machines would fail, and yet humans endured. Those envoys said nothing, but their silence was heavy, for they wondered if Earth's quiet was not weakness but patience. The council continued its debate, generals standing to boast of their own armies, describing soldiers who had trained for centuries, warriors who carried traditions older than Earth's history. They compared their armies to mountains, to rivers, to storms that never ended, and in their boasting they convinced themselves that no human army could ever match such forces. One noble with jeweled skin shouted that if humans ever dared to field an army, the galaxy would crush it within days. The council cheered again, but behind their cheers, the rumors continued to spread, and fear began to take root in the hearts of those who listened closely. Far beyond the chamber, on distant battlefields scarred by endless wars, alien soldiers had already seen something the council refused to believe. They had seen humans fight with discipline, moving as one, obeying orders without question, turning chaos into calm precision. They had seen human soldiers march through storms of fire without breaking formation, their eyes steady, their voices firm, their unity unshaken. These stories traveled from soldier to soldier, from camp to camp, until they reached the ears of the galaxy's people, and though the council laughed, the people began to wonder, if humans had learned discipline, if humans had built an army not of chance but of training, then what kind of force would they unleash when the time came? Inside the chamber the laughter finally slowed. The Chancellor leaned forward, his voice heavy with arrogance. He declared that the council would not waste another moment speaking of humans. They were too small, too weak, too unworthy of the galaxy's concern. His words echoed against the walls, but even as they did, the heavy doors of the chamber opened and a messenger entered, his uniform torn from travel, his eyes filled with fear. He carried a report from the frontier, one that spoke of a battle where a single human battalion had stood against an entire alien legion and had not been broken. The chamber fell quiet for only a heartbeat, then erupted in laughter again, dismissing it as another lie. Yet the silence of that one heartbeat carried more weight than all the noise that followed. For in that silence the truth had entered the hall, a truth that no amount of arrogance could erase. Earth was training in silence, and the galaxy had no idea what was coming. The council chamber might have laughed and mocked, but far away from their banners and polished floors, the frontier felt different. The frontier always felt the truth before the council admitted it. On a barren world under a pale sun, alien troops prepared their lines. They had been told the battle would be easy, that humans were little more than wild fighters with no discipline, soldiers who broke under pressure. But as they set their weapons and secured their armor, a sound reached them, faint at first, like a low drumbeat beneath the wind, then stronger, steadier, until it echoed across the dry plains. The sound of boots, hundreds, then thousands, striking the ground in perfect rhythm. No shouting, no scattered movement, only the cold, steady thunder of feet moving as one. The alien commander raised his visor and frowned. He had expected a ragged force of desperate fighters, but when the horizon cleared, he saw something else entirely: human soldiers moving in formations that held tighter than steel, rows upon rows, each step measured, each movement identical, rifles held with precision, armor marked not with trophies but with discipline. They advanced in silence, no war cries, no noise, only the steady march. The commander felt unease creep into his chest. Silence on a battlefield was unnatural. Soldiers were meant to shout, to rage, to roar, but these humans said nothing, and their silence was louder than any scream. The alien troops shifted nervously. Some whispered that the stories might be true, that Earth had been training in secret, but their officers barked at them, telling them not to fear, to remember the council's words. Humans were weak, humans had no armies, only mobs. Yet even as they shouted, the silence of the human march cut through their bravado. Step by step the humans came closer, and the ground trembled as if the world itself feared them. At last the alien commander ordered his troops to fire. Beams of light and storms of plasma filled the air. But the humans did not scatter. They did not scream. Their lines adjusted, their shields shifted, and still they advanced, answering with precise shots that struck targets as if the battlefield itself guided their aim. Every volley from the humans was calculated, not a single wasted shot, not a single broken line. The aliens shouted in confusion. Their soldiers tried to regroup, but chaos spread quickly, their ranks breaking even as the human ranks held steady. And in the commander's mind a cold thought grew. This was no mob. This was no mob at all. The first clash came at the outer trenches, where alien defenders expected to overwhelm the humans, but the humans moved like water, flowing around defenses, covering one another, every soldier knowing exactly where to be, exactly when to strike. Their discipline turned chaos into inevitability. Alien soldiers screamed as their lines collapsed, and in minutes the trenches that were meant to hold for hours were silent, filled with fallen fighters, while the human march pressed forward without pause. Reports reached the council through panic transmissions, soldiers crying that the humans fought like machines, that they did not break, that they did not tire. But in the grand chamber the delegates laughed again, claiming the reports were exaggerated, fear-driven. But deep inside some of them began to sweat, for they had heard the same words too many times: different worlds, different battles, always the same truth. Humans fought with a discipline no one had expected. On the battlefield the alien commander rallied his elite guard, towering soldiers bred for war, their armor thicker, their weapons heavier. He told himself that the humans could not withstand a true charge, that their silence would break against real fury, and so he ordered the guard forward, their roar shaking the air, their charge a wall of rage. But the human lines did not move. They stood like stone, rifles raised, eyes unflinching, and when the guard struck, they met not chaos but precision, every human soldier firing in perfect rhythm, every formation shifting as one. The guard's roar faltered, their charge broke, and soon they too scattered, crushed not by superior weapons but by superior discipline. When the field finally fell silent again, it was not the council's laughter that echoed, but the weight of silence itself, the silence of an army that had marched, fought, and conquered without losing its unity. Human soldiers stood over the captured field, their faces steady, their lines unbroken, and the alien survivors who watched them felt something colder than fear. They felt respect, unwilling but undeniable, for they knew now that this was no mob, no band of chance fighters. This was a professional army, trained in silence, disciplined beyond measure. And if the council refused to see it, then the galaxy would learn the hard way. The messenger who carried news of the battle back to the council could barely speak. His voice cracked, his eyes hollow. He told them the humans did not fight like men, but like storms given flesh. They fought with patience, with rhythm, with an unshaken will. He told them the field had fallen not in hours but in minutes, and still the council tried to dismiss it. Still they tried to laugh, but their voices faltered, for somewhere deep inside they knew the truth. Earth had been silent for too long, training, preparing, and now the galaxy had seen the first glimpse of what that silence had created. The sound of boots striking ground, the silence of a human army, and the weight of a galaxy beginning to tremble. The frontier world still smoked from the clash, broken trenches filled with silence, but the news of what had happened did not die there. It spread through scouts, through frightened survivors, through whispers carried faster than ships, and soon the story reached alien generals, who refused to believe it. They said their soldiers must have panicked, they said luck had favored the humans, but pride could not rest without proof, so they ordered another strike, this time with double the numbers, this time with commanders who had fought 100 wars, this time with the arrogance that discipline could be crushed by sheer force. Fleets gathered in orbit above another contested world, ships filled with soldiers ready to remind humanity of its place, and as the fleets descended, the aliens told themselves that silence could not stop a storm of fire. On the ground, the humans were already waiting. Their soldiers stood in formations across a barren plain, no high walls, no fortresses, only men and women in uniform, rifles steady, armor plain but hardened. Their boots dug into the dust as if roots held them there. They did not shout. They did not chant. They did not roar like the alien armies above them. They stood in perfect calm, their eyes fixed forward, their breath steady as one. Even as alien transports broke the sky with fire and sound, the humans remained unmoved, waiting for the order that had not yet come, for discipline was stronger than fear. The alien generals deployed their troops with thunder, war machines pounding the earth, heavy infantry roaring with war cries that shook the air, artillery blasting the horizon with light. They wanted to crush the human lines with noise before the battle even began. But the silence of the humans refused to break, and in that silence was a strength none of the aliens had ever known. When the order finally came, the human lines moved, not in chaos, not in panic, but as one. Rifles rose together. Shields locked together, the plain filled with a steady rhythm. And then the first volley rang out, precise and sharp, cutting through the thunder like a blade through cloth. The aliens roared forward, but every charge met the same response. Lines of fire that never wavered. Soldiers who covered one another with perfect timing. Units that shifted like parts of a single machine. Where one fell, another stepped in without hesitation, and still the lines did not break. The alien generals screamed at their troops to push harder, to crush the humans with sheer numbers. But no matter how many pressed forward, they were met with the same wall of discipline. Every step forward cost them more than they could afford, and still the human lines held. Panic began to spread among the alien ranks. Soldiers who had once mocked humans now whispered that these were not the same fighters they remembered. These were not mobs of desperate colonists. These were soldiers who fought with the patience of stone, the precision of machines, and the will of something greater than themselves. One alien officer cried that it was impossible for a young species to master such training. But as another human volley tore through his lines, his words turned to silence, his disbelief drowned in the rhythm of boots and rifles. The battle stretched into hours, but time favored the disciplined, not the desperate. The human lines adjusted slowly, steadily, pressing forward with careful steps, never rushing, never breaking formation. Their silence was terrifying. The aliens shouted, cursed, screamed their commands. But the humans gave nothing back, no sound but the steady advance, no weakness but the patience to wait for the right strike. And when the humans finally pushed into the alien center, it was not with fury but with inevitability, their movements smooth, their shots precise, their discipline unshaken. The alien center collapsed under the weight of that silence, and what began as war turned into a rout. In orbit, alien generals watched in horror as their proud legions scattered below, their signals filled with panic, their voices begging for retreat, and the generals knew then what the council refused to believe. Humanity had built something more dangerous than raw power. They had built an army that fought not with chaos but with unity, not with rage but with control, an army that carried silence as its weapon, and against such an army, numbers meant nothing. The reports carried back to the Galactic Council were broken with static and fear. Some claimed the humans used machines to control their soldiers. Others claimed they used dark sciences to break their minds. But those who had stood on the battlefield knew better. They had seen the eyes of the soldiers, steady, calm, unbroken, and they knew it was not machines, not tricks, but training, harsh and unrelenting, forged in silence until no fear could bend them. And that truth spread through the council chamber like a cold wind. Still the council tried to laugh, but their laughter was hollow now. Even the Chancellor's voice cracked as he declared the humans lucky. Even the generals who mocked Earth before spoke with less pride. For they knew luck did not march in perfect lines. Luck did not fire with precision. Luck did not break empires in silence. Only training, only discipline, only patience could do that, and deep inside they all knew the truth. They were no longer facing scattered fighters. They were facing a professional army, and the galaxy had no answer for it. Far from the council, in the hidden camps of Earth, soldiers trained in silence, their boots striking the ground in rhythm, their eyes forward, their voices quiet. They endured drills that broke bodies but forged unshakable will. They carried the weight of a species determined never to be mocked again, and as they marched under the cold stars, their silence spoke louder than war, for it promised that when they entered the field again, the galaxy would fall silent once more. The council chamber glowed with banners and false confidence, but beneath the polished floors and tall columns, cracks had already begun to spread. Whispers moved faster than decrees. Soldiers returned from the front with hollow eyes. Merchants carried stories they could not explain, and everywhere the same phrase slipped from tongue to tongue. Humans had changed. Humans were no longer the scattered mobs of old. They had become something else, something trained, something terrifying in its silence. Still, the council tried to deny it. The High Chancellor stood tall, his claws gripping the rail, and declared the latest defeats nothing but accidents, tricks of terrain and chance. He told the assembly that no young species could master discipline in such a short time, that humans had no centuries of tradition, no ancient codes of honor, no endless academies to drill their warriors. The chamber cheered, voices eager to believe. But even as they shouted, unease crawled in their hearts, for rumors had already outgrown their lies. From the rim colonies came reports of strange camps hidden deep in forests, of barren deserts where soldiers drilled until the ground shook, of mountains that echoed with the rhythm of boots on stone. Merchants swore they had seen formations of humans moving like shadows, lines unbroken, faces unreadable. Scouts whispered of battles where human squads fought without a word, gestures and signals carrying more power than shouts. Some even claimed to have seen training that bordered on cruelty. Soldiers running until collapse, rising again, lifting burdens that seemed impossible, never permitted to stop until every weakness had burned away. The council dismissed these as fantasy, yet no one could erase the cold truth that kept returning in broken transmissions. Wherever humans appeared, alien armies fell, not to numbers, not to raw firepower, but to discipline. Inside the council, tension spread like fire through dry leaves. Generals argued, their voices sharp, some demanding full-scale war to crush Earth before it grew stronger, others urging restraint, warning that every battle lost only gave humanity more respect, more fear to wield as a weapon. The matriarch, her silk robes heavy with age and wisdom, leaned on her staff and said quietly that perhaps the galaxy had misunderstood Earth from the beginning, that silence was not weakness but patience, that training was not sudden but planned, but her voice was drowned by shouts of pride. Pride had always been the council's greatest shield, and pride would not be set aside so easily. Meanwhile, far from the council's glittering towers, in the dust and cold of Earth's hidden camps, the truth lived in flesh and blood. Rows upon rows of human soldiers marched in rhythm under the watchful eyes of commanders. Their drills were merciless, days without rest, nights without comfort, tasks that broke the weak but forged the strong into iron. They ran with packs heavier than their own bodies. They trained with weapons until muscle remembered more than the mind. They learned to fight in silence, to move as one, to obey without hesitation, to trust the man or woman beside them more than themselves. In those camps laughter was rare, weakness was punished, and discipline was law. When recruits cried, they were told to stand. When recruits fell, they were told to rise. And those who remained grew into something the galaxy had never seen before. A professional army not bound by tradition but by will, not trained for glory but for survival. On the frontier the results became clearer with every battle. Alien commanders who once boasted of easy victories found their troops faltering before human lines. They saw soldiers who did not break even when outnumbered, who advanced step by step through storms of fire, who fought not as individuals but as parts of a greater whole. An alien officer captured after one such battle spoke with shaking hands, describing how the humans moved, how every rifle fired as if guided by a single mind, how every order was obeyed with perfect timing. He said he had faced armies before, armies older, richer, prouder, but he had never felt such terror as when the human line advanced in silence, boots striking the ground like drums of doom. His words spread through camps and cities, and soon even those who had never seen a human soldier began to fear them. Back in the chamber, the council could not hide the truth forever. Reports piled too high, voices cracked under pressure, pride grew harder to hold. Some leaders still roared that humans were nothing, but their roars sounded thin. Others demanded secret talks with Earth, to ask for peace, perhaps even alliance. The chamber fractured, and for the first time in centuries, the council did not sound like one voice but like many broken ones. The matriarch looked across the chamber and saw fear in every pair of eyes, though most tried to hide it. She whispered again that silence was never weakness, it was preparation, and in her heart she knew that Earth had been preparing for this moment all along. Outside the chamber, in the streets of the capital, common citizens spoke more honestly than their leaders. They whispered that if humans could train armies in silence, then perhaps they had trained fleets too, fleets waiting in the dark, fleets no one had seen yet. They wondered aloud if the galaxy's proud empires had underestimated not just a people but an idea, the idea that discipline and unity could turn weakness into strength. And those whispers carried farther than the council's decrees, for fear always travels faster than pride. On Earth, soldiers continued their drills, the sound of boots striking ground echoing under starlight. They did not care for council laughter, nor for rumors. They cared only for discipline, for strength, for the bond that tied them to one another. And as they marched, they carried with them the weight of their species, the quiet promise that when the time came, they would step onto the battlefield again, and the galaxy would fall silent once more. On the frontier where dust storms cut the sky and the ground cracked under endless war, the galaxy prepared another test for humanity. Alien commanders who had lost their pride in earlier battles swore to redeem themselves. They gathered troops from different worlds, soldiers bred in academies centuries old, veterans who had never known defeat. They promised the council that this time would be different. This time humanity would break. They marched with banners high, their fleets burning across the horizon like suns, their generals shouting that discipline belonged only to the elder species. Yet beneath their voices, doubt lingered, for every soldier had heard the same stories, every soldier had listened to whispers of silence, of human armies that moved without fear, of formations that never broke. When the armies landed on the contested world, they found the humans already there. No walls, no fortresses, only soldiers standing in perfect lines across the barren plain. Their uniforms were plain, their weapons simple, yet they stood with a weight heavier than fortresses. The aliens waited for them to shout or chant, to show some noise of courage, but none came. The humans stood in silence, rifles steady, eyes fixed forward, and when their boots shifted, they shifted as one. That silence pressed on the alien soldiers like a weight on their chests, and though their commanders barked orders, the fear could not be erased. The battle began with thunder, alien artillery tearing open the ground, fire sweeping across the plains, but the human lines did not scatter. They moved in rhythm, shields lifting, ranks adjusting, every soldier covering another. When the smoke cleared, they answered with precision fire that tore through enemy ranks like a blade. Not a single volley was wasted, not a single step unmeasured. Alien officers screamed for their troops to press forward, but the harder they charged, the more they faltered, for every time their soldiers roared, they met silence, and that silence was unbreakable. Hours passed and the field became chaos for the alien forces, but not for the humans. Their formations held, their advances measured, their discipline unshaken. They marched forward step by step, pushing the enemy back without rushing, without faltering. One alien veteran, scarred from 100 battles, stared at the advancing lines and felt something he had never known before, helplessness. He swung his blade, he fired his rifle, but nothing broke the human's calm. He shouted at his comrades, but their courage bled away in the face of silence. When he finally fell, he did not fall to fire or fury, but to the steady inevitability of soldiers who never lost control. Reports streamed back to the Galactic Council, filled with desperation. Officers spoke of soldiers who fought like machines, of lines that did not bend, of battles that felt more like executions than war. They begged for reinforcements, they begged for retreat, but the council could give nothing, for their fleets were scattered, their pride already broken. In the chamber, leaders argued once more. Some demanded that Earth be crushed with the full weight of the galaxy, others demanded peace before more lives were lost. But every voice cracked when they remembered the same truth. The humans were not improvising, they were trained in silence so deep that no fear could break them. In the capital streets, common people no longer mocked Earth. Merchants spoke in hushed tones, saying that to trade with humans was safer than to betray them. Farmers whispered that humans could fight with the patience of growing seeds. Even pirates swore they would not touch a human convoy, for every raid ended the same way, with silence and death. The galaxy had begun to shift, not by decree, not by treaty, but by fear that moved faster than light. Back on Earth, in the hidden camps carved into mountains and deserts, the drills continued. Soldiers marched until the ground cracked, trained until their bodies failed, then rose to continue again. Commanders pushed them harder, not because they doubted, but because they knew the galaxy would not stop testing them. In those camps there was no pride, only discipline. No one asked for glory, no one asked for mercy. Every soldier knew their duty, to stand as one, to fight as one, to carry the silence of humanity into every battle until the galaxy itself bowed. The alien armies that had promised to crush Earth did not return home. Survivors limped back in broken ships, their eyes hollow, their voices whispering the same words. They are not like us. They are not like anyone. They fight as if the battlefield itself obeys them. Those words reached every corner of the galaxy, and no denial could erase them. The council grew quieter, their laughter gone, their pride fading. The matriarch, who had warned them before, sat in silence now, for she knew the galaxy was witnessing the birth of a force it could never control. And still the humans prepared, silent in their training, steady in their march. They did not celebrate victories, they did not boast, for they knew this was only the beginning. More tests would come, more battles would rise, and the galaxy would not rest until it learned fully what a human professional army truly was. The silence of their discipline was not the end of war, it was the start of a new age, an age where every battlefield would fall quiet when humanity entered the field. The ruins of the last battlefield still smoldered when new orders rippled through the galaxy, and this time they did not come from proud warlords or reckless generals, they came from the highest chambers of the Galactic Council itself. The leaders who had once laughed at Earth's weakness now sat with grim faces, whispering in private halls, their voices sharp with fear and desperation. Too many armies had been broken, too many fleets scattered, and still humanity had not revealed the full extent of its strength. They decided the only way forward was to send their finest, their most decorated forces, the elite guards of the empires who had never been defeated in centuries. They swore to themselves that discipline could only be answered with greater discipline, that no young species could outmatch armies forged in endless tradition. In secret, they prepared to crush Earth once and for all, to prove that silence could not defeat the proud. Across the stars, preparations began. The elite soldiers drilled in formations, their armor polished to a mirror shine, their weapons glowing with power. Their commanders roared about honor and glory, promising that they would not only defeat the humans but erase the shame the council carried. Their fleets gathered in secret space, thousands of ships ready to move as one, and the galaxy once again waited, holding its breath to see if this time would be different. On Earth, the reports of this gathering reached the war halls beneath oceans and mountains. Screens glowed with intercepted signals, maps lit up with enemy routes, and still the human commanders did not panic. They listened, they studied, and at last the envoy, scar sharp on his face, spoke with a calm voice that filled the hall. They bring their best. They believe discipline is theirs alone. But we have built something they cannot understand. They train for pride. We train for survival. And survival is always stronger. The generals nodded, their eyes steady. Orders went out to every hidden camp, to every soldier already hardened by drills, and soon the sound of boots striking the ground echoed across Earth once more. When the alien fleets arrived at the chosen battlefield, a wide plain under a blood-red sky, they expected fear. They expected humans to hide behind fortresses or scatter into forests. Instead, they found lines already waiting. Human soldiers stood in formation, armor plain, rifles steady, their ranks stretching farther than the eye could follow. There were no banners, no chants, no roars of defiance. Only silence, heavier than the storm clouds gathering above. The alien commanders laughed nervously, telling themselves this would be like before, but their soldiers felt something colder, the weight of silence pressing against their hearts. The battle began with thunder. Alien artillery shook the ground, war machines screamed forward, elite warriors charged with roars that shook the sky. But the human lines did not falter. Shields lifted, rifles rose, and then the first volley came, sharp and precise, tearing holes through the charge. Every shot struck its mark, every step forward met resistance. The aliens had expected chaos, but what they found was order sharper than a blade. The human formations moved as one, advancing step by step, their silence louder than the enemy's screams. The alien elite tried again, this time sending in their heaviest troops, warriors bred for strength, their armor like mountains, their weapons capable of shattering walls. They struck with fury, breaking into the human lines, but the humans closed around them, their formations folding and shifting with perfect timing. Squads flowed like water, covering gaps, striking weak points, cutting down giants with precision fire. The heavy troops roared in rage, but rage could not break discipline. In minutes, their charge dissolved, and the humans pressed forward again, unshaken, unstoppable. From the council ships above, commanders watched in disbelief. Their finest soldiers, their strongest weapons, their most disciplined units, all were breaking against lines of humans who fought with patience and silence. One admiral screamed that it was impossible, that no training could match centuries of tradition. But his voice faltered when he saw the truth. Humans had forged something new, something stronger. Their discipline did not come from pride or glory. It came from hardship, from survival, from a will that no enemy could bend. On the ground, the alien lines finally began to collapse. Troops who had once stood unshaken now threw down their weapons, fleeing from soldiers who never broke step. The battlefield filled with silence as human boots marched across the plain, unhurried, inevitable. Even the wind seemed to die, as if the world itself bowed to the discipline of the army that now stood victorious. When the survivors returned to the council, their reports were filled with fear. They spoke of soldiers who fought without hesitation, who moved as though sharing one mind, who never gave the enemy a single chance. They said that facing humans was like facing death itself, silent and certain. The council listened in silence, their pride finally breaking. No one laughed this time. No one mocked. They sat with heavy faces, knowing the truth they had tried so long to deny. Humanity had become the army the galaxy feared, and there was no force left that could deny it. Back on Earth, the soldiers returned to their camps, not with cheers, not with celebration, but with the same steady silence they had carried into battle. They cleaned their rifles, they marched in drills, they prepared for the next test. For them victory was not an end but another step. They did not fight for glory or pride. They fought for something greater, and as their boots struck the ground in perfect rhythm, the sound carried into the night like a promise, that when humanity's army entered the field, the galaxy would always fall silent. The defeat of the Council's elite guards shook the galaxy like a quake that would not end. Worlds that once mocked Earth now whispered of its armies in fear, and merchants carried stories that spread faster than fleets. They said the humans fought without shouting, that their soldiers did not break, that their silence alone had crushed the strongest armies. No one wanted to believe it, but the ruins on the frontier proved the truth. The Council's chambers, once filled with laughter and arrogance, now echoed with bitter arguments. Leaders shouted over one another, some demanding that Earth be destroyed before it grew stronger, others warning that another defeat would end the Council forever. Their voices carried no unity, only desperation. The matriarch sat quietly as the chamber thundered around her. She had seen this before, empires roaring loudest just before their fall. She raised her hand and spoke with weary calm, telling them that they faced not a mob, not a child race fumbling in the dark, but an army unlike any the galaxy had ever seen. She reminded them that humans had trained in silence while the council mocked, that patience had forged them into steel. But her words only deepened the divide. Prideful generals would not listen. They claimed silence was weakness, discipline a trick, and swore to gather even greater fleets to prove it. Yet in their hearts they trembled, for every soldier they sent against humanity returned broken or did not return at all. While the council argued, humanity prepared. In hidden camps under mountains and deserts, soldiers drilled through nights without rest. Commanders pushed them harder, shaping them into something even more precise, even more unshakable. New recruits joined the ranks, their fear burned away by endless drills until silence became their language. Old veterans guided them, teaching that every step, every breath, every shot must serve the whole. In those camps there were no individuals, only a single will forged from thousands of bodies. The boots striking earth in unison became the heartbeat of a new era. On a distant world rich in resources, the Council's fractured fleets tried one more test. They sent a coalition of armies, gathered not in pride but in fear, hoping that numbers alone could drown the humans. The plain where they landed was wide and open, stretching under a cold sun. They expected humans to build walls or hide in trenches. Instead, they found the same silence as before. Lines of soldiers already waiting, armor plain, rifles steady, eyes calm. No banners, no boasts, no sound. Just patience heavier than stone. The coalition commanders gave the order, and waves of soldiers surged forward, thousands upon thousands shouting war cries. The noise shook the air, a wall of sound meant to crush morale before blades even clashed. But the humans did not flinch. Their rifles lifted as one, and the first volley cut through the noise. Alien soldiers fell in perfect rhythm, the charge stumbling before it had even begun. Again the coalition pushed, sending in heavier troops, sending in machines taller than towers, but the human formations bent like water, flowing around the attacks, folding and shifting with precision, striking weak points until giants fell and machines burned. Hours passed, but the rhythm never changed. Every volley came sharp and measured. Every step forward pressed like the weight of a tide. The coalition soldiers began to falter, their voices cracking, their cries turning into confusion. Against chaos, the humans gave only silence, and silence was stronger. By nightfall the battlefield belonged to Earth once more. Human soldiers stood unbroken, their lines still intact, their discipline unshaken. Survivors from the coalition fled in scattered groups, their fear louder than any command. The news of the battle reached the council before the survivors themselves. Reports filled with disbelief and horror described the same thing over and over. An army that fought as one, an army that never broke, an army that carried silence as its sharpest weapon. The chamber that once shook with laughter now sat quiet. Even the proudest generals could not ignore the truth anymore. Every attempt to crush humanity had ended the same way, with silence. In the capital streets, common citizens whispered openly now. They said the council had awakened something it could not control. They said humanity had shown the galaxy what war truly was. Children played at marching in silence, their small feet striking rhythm on the stones, their parents pulling them close in fear. Merchants hesitated to defy Earth. Pirates avoided human space entirely. The fear had spread beyond soldiers and leaders. It had become a truth in every corner of the stars. On Earth, the envoy stood before the leaders once more, his scar lit by the glow of maps. His voice was calm but heavy. They will not stop. Pride blinds them, desperation drives them. They will come again, stronger, and when they do, we must not falter. We cannot boast, we cannot grow arrogant. We must remain what we are, silent, steady, united. Only then will the galaxy learn that no force can break us. His words sank deep into the hall, and every leader knew he was right. Victories meant nothing if pride poisoned them. Silence was their shield, and silence would be their crown. Above Earth, warships drifted in quiet orbits, their dark hulls casting shadows across the stars. They did not shine, they did not roar, but their presence was enough. Every time an alien scout came close, it turned away. Every time a pirate thought of raiding, fear stopped him. The galaxy had learned at last that when humanity's army entered the field, the only sound left behind was silence. The galaxy had grown quieter than it had been in centuries. Once, war cries had filled the stars, fleets had roared across the void, and the council chamber had shaken with arrogance and laughter. Now there was only unease. Every battle fought against Earth ended the same way, with silence. Armies that had once claimed glory now whispered in shame. Fleets that had once called themselves invincible now avoided human space. The fear of humanity's trained army had spread so deeply that even those who had never seen a battlefield felt its shadow. Children whispered about the silent soldiers who never broke. Merchants carried rumors of drills that lasted until the ground cracked. And even pirates swore that human convoys were untouchable. The council had tried to deny it, had tried to fight it, but truth weighed heavier than pride. Humanity had shown the galaxy what discipline truly was. Still, the proud are never silent forever. In hidden halls, leaders of the most arrogant empires met in secret. They could not bear the thought of bowing before Earth. They swore that one last attempt would be made, one strike that would break the silence and return laughter to the chamber. They gathered what remained of their fleets, pulling ships from distant colonies, forcing soldiers into service. They promised their people that this would be the end of Earth's rise. But their words carried no fire, only desperation. Their soldiers marched with doubt in their hearts. Their officers shouted with voices that trembled. For all their pride, none could forget the stories of human armies that stood unbroken. On Earth, the war halls glowed with maps of the galaxy, every whisper of enemy movement already traced, every plan already known. The envoy stood at the center, scar cutting across his face like a reminder of battles survived, his voice steady as stone. They come again, not with strength, but with fear dressed as courage. They will fail, because they do not understand. They fight for pride. We fight for survival. And survival cannot be broken. His words filled the hall with silence heavier than steel. Orders went out, soldiers prepared, and once again the camps thundered with the sound of boots striking ground in perfect rhythm. The final coalition arrived above a frontier world chosen as their battleground. Their fleets blazed bright, their banners high, their voices loud as they promised victory. But on the ground below, human soldiers already waited. Rows upon rows, standing in perfect formation, rifles steady, eyes unshaken. No sound came from them. No roar, no boast, only silence. The alien commanders shouted for courage, but their soldiers felt their hearts sink. For they remembered the stories. They remembered what silence meant. The battle began with fury. The coalition threw everything at once. Artillery, war machines, elite troops, waves of soldiers meant to drown the humans. The ground shook, the air burned, the sky tore open with fire. But when the smoke cleared, the human lines were still there. Shields raised, rifles lifted, formations intact. They answered with volleys sharp as lightning, every shot precise, every movement measured. Where chaos raged, humans brought order. Where fear spread, humans pressed forward. The coalition forces shouted, screamed, begged their soldiers to hold, but the silence of the human army cut through everything. Hour by hour, the battle turned. Alien units broke, their formations collapsing, their courage bleeding into the dust. The humans advanced step by step, never rushing, never faltering, each footfall echoing like a drumbeat of inevitability. War machines fell silent, elite guards scattered, commanders screamed into empty comms as their armies dissolved. The coalition that had sworn to crush Earth ended the same as all the rest, broken, shattered, silent. From orbit, surviving admirals watched the battlefield collapse. Their voices cracked as they sent desperate transmissions back to the council. Words filled with fear, they do not fight like us. They do not stop. They do not break. They fight as one, and we cannot stand against them. Those words carried farther than any fleet, spreading across the stars, until every world in the galaxy understood the same truth. The era of laughter was over. Humanity had entered the field, and silence now belonged to them. In the council chamber, there was no laughter left. Delegates sat in heavy quiet, unable to speak, unable to deny what they had seen. The matriarch rose slowly, her silk robes dragging across the floor, and her voice broke the silence. This is no longer our age. The galaxy has witnessed what a human professional army truly is. And in that silence, we have lost. No one argued. No one mocked. They bowed their heads, for pride had nothing left to stand on. On Earth, the soldiers returned to their camps, not with cheers or celebrations, but with the same calm they carried into battle. They cleaned their weapons, marched in drills, trained harder still. For them victory was not the end, only another step. They did not fight for glory or pride. They fought for survival, for unity, for the promise that their silence would always be stronger than the galaxy's noise. And as their boots struck the ground in perfect rhythm, the sound rolled into the night like thunder beneath the stars. The galaxy had fallen silent, not because it chose to, but because humanity's army had taught it silence. And in that silence, a new age began.